is a portfolio view of influencer marketing. We are going to talk about it now.
Hey, welcome back to Thinking Out Loud. I'm Joel.
Still Brad.
Still Brad, and we are glad to have you here. So, let's say you got a portfolio, and in that portfolio, you have stuck your influencer marketing management. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you know what that is. This is good. This is gold. And so we're going to talk about you stuck your influencer marketing into your portfolio.
Oh, got it.
So you have a portfolio. This is all very clear. You have a portfolio.
Right.
You put your influencer marketing into that portfolio, and that doesn't mean that you know what's in it. And so we're going to tell you what you've just done and what's in it and why you've done it that way.
Yes.
That's how this is
Insert into marketing portfolio plus X equals profit. We're here.
And there you go. Okay. So first question is, all right, here's why we're doing this. We're getting consistent questions on, some of the how-to and the wherefore and the what-fi and all of that of influencer marketing. We thought, you know what, hey, it's time for a video. Let's do some of this. So we got some questions about the portfolio view of influencer marketing. Brad, before we go any further, what is a portfolio view of anything, but more importantly, what's a portfolio view of influencer marketing?
A portfolio view of anything is basically saying, don't worry about any individual item, worry about what's happening more broadly. This is very private. This is very common when it comes to private equity. It's very common when it comes to 401k management.
Right.
It should be very common as well in influencer marketing, but it's not a lot of times. I think that's why we wanted to demystify this.
So if I have a portfolio, and in that portfolio, I have 100% long GameStop, then that's what I should be looking for, right? I'm super well diversified.
Your portfolio is GameStop.
Right. So, and I have a portfolio view, yes or no?
I would say technically yes, but for all practical purposes, hell no.
Okay. What would a portfolio view look like in the context of influencer?
Well, in the context of influencers, there's actually two ways to view it, in my opinion. Number one is, how does influencer fit in with paid social, with paid search, with any affiliate programs that you might have, and what's the role of influencer as part of your broader marketing portfolio? So that's the one way to look at it. The second way, and I think we should get into both of these, the second way is inside of your influencer campaign, when you're running with creator A on Instagram, like, should you be focused on how creator A on Instagram performs, or should you be concerned about how the 10 creators you're running on Instagram are performing?
Okay, so it is, where does influencer fit in your broader marketing portfolio? Two, where does influencer fit in, or within influencer, what's the portfolio makeup? And we could look at that both in terms of size of creators in one channel, but also in multi-channel.
Yeah,
right?
It gets complicated quickly.
Yep. Okay, so let's pick one channel. Let's pick. What do you want to pick? Up to you.
Let's do YouTube.
Okay, let's do YouTube.
This is a YouTube video.
So there we go. So within YouTube, let's look at size of creators, and then let's look at vertical of creators. Someone who's coming into the influencer space, how ought they to think about that? Do they focus on micro, nano, pico influencers? When do they do that? When do they need, the big ones and the celebrity style? And how do they decide? What's the decision matrix by deciding where you go?
Well, it's overwhelming because there's so many different choices.
Agreed.
But to try to simplify things, if you're looking for the best conversion, in general, you're going to want to work with the smallest influencers possible. I mean, you think about it, if your own friends, you went to the person that you trusted the most on a topic, it's one person. But if you're like, well, I want to get 20 opinions on restaurants, that 20th friend of yours probably isn't super knowledgeable about restaurants, but you're still going to take their advice. So I think the bigger an influencer gets, in general, the less their audience is going to be engaged and trustworthy. But that doesn't play out with all creators.
Right. And we also, we've got to talk about marketing objectives here, right? Any further discussion of which 100%. To use and when without that is going to be useless. So if, when do you use a big one, right? I mean, that's
right. The biggest influencers out there, you're going to want to do that number one, when you're just trying to create buzz and
Yeah.
get people excited
Because
about
your 20th
product.
friend isn't going to get an article written about them. They're not going to get any earned media.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And by the way, if you're going the celebrity route, almost everyone knows those celebrities. So you can use that content for paid influencer, paid social as well, which gives a whole lot of extensibility. That's a fancy word.
Is that a word?
Working with it is. I'm thinking out loud.
Okay.
So that I think is one end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And would you agree that if you're looking to drive conversion, it's those smaller influencers that are the strongest?
Yeah, hands down. And I agree in concept, in general. Yeah, go as small as you possibly can. Now, what's the problem with going small?
Well, it's really time intensive.
It's time intensive. It's massively time intensive. It's super difficult to scale.
Really hard to scale. Almost impossible to scale.
Yeah. So it is, unless you are working with some kind of platform, service, what have you, where some entity is handling it for you, where it's pretty plug and play. I would also say when you have a highly visual product, you can get away with it. If it's a service that requires explanation, it's not really an option to do the micro stuff. It really isn't.
And we're such big fans of video in general. And if you want to scale a campaign with video, you're looking at 3 and 4x your time on something that's already overwhelming.
Yep.
Like really the only way you can run campaigns at scale at the micro influencer level is with static images. And you're really, fighting a fight with one arm tied behind your back.
Yeah. Yeah. So even though it's in a perfect world, look, in a perfect world, it's having people tell their friends about something, right? It's difficult to scale. Micro influencers are no different. They're really, really difficult to scale. And so what we're constantly looking for is what is the next best thing? What is the best proximal recommendation that we can get, that we can we can facilitate, but we can do it in a way that is scalable, where one person at a company can manage this, generally with an agency partner, but you don't have to build out a massive team, and you're eliminating all this, all sorts of work. So, okay. So the question that we got, this one's interesting, and it feeds into what we were just talking about. How might your portfolio change based on your campaign goals? You're saying go as small as you possibly can. Effectively, for a user acquisition, go as big as you can in terms of buzz and all that, and getting earned media. That dichotomy misses something central, though. And I bet you could guess what it is.
Well, I just don't think it's as simple as looking at either extreme and saying there's a Goldilocks in the middle that
Right.
does both, because different creators perform very differently. So if we have a campaign, I don't know if this is what you're driving towards or not, but if we had a campaign that was really focused on conversion and another one that was more on branding, we might look at the same size creators who have all the same demographics and know immediately one is better for branding and one is better for conversion.
Yeah. I mean, I think I fully agree. I think by putting it as either or, like either branding or acquisition, it tries to force the influencer space, regardless of platform, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Insta, Snap, whatever, it forces it into a traditional marketing taxonomy where it doesn't actually belong, which is to say it's a full funnel activity. And it has to be understood with a full funnel activity. And if you have metrics that say this is brand, this is performance, and that's it, and you've made that kind of bifurcation within your company, then you're going to have a really tough time in influencer, period. Because it's not purely brand and it's not purely performance, and it is something else. Yes. And it needs its own, and we beat the drum consistently, it needs its own measurement framework. I'm going to say that better. We beat the drum consistently that this needs its own measurement framework. Because if you don't have your own measurement framework and you're trying to cram it into something, you're going to likely be dissatisfied with the results. It's not that you can't run effective performance campaigns. You can. It's not that you can't, but it just, to get the value out of influencer, it has to be full funnel. Yeah,
I think that's so important, is that organizations that are watching this, if you're trying to run a successful influencer campaign, first look at your structure internally. Do not try to run an influencer campaign exclusively on branding or exclusively on direct response and expect that you're going to be able to measure the true value of an influencer campaign. You're simply not. So the old paradigm of having creatives and branding on one end and analytics and performance on the other, it doesn't work for influencer. And if brands are able to merge those and measure accordingly, holy shit, there's a lot of good stuff there, but you've got to be willing to flex your organizational structure boundaries in order to get there.
Yep.
So I don't know how that brings us back to a portfolio view other than to say, like, within influencer, there's a whole lot of different sizes of creators that can work depending on what you're trying to do. But I think one of the questions that we hear repeatedly is, why didn't creator A perform very well, or creator B performed really well? We want more.
Yeah, we want
people
more of
like
that. So do we.
What's your answer to that? I mean, because yeah, this creator performed great, and here's the 6 list of demographic information that we know for certain about that creator. Why can't you just replicate that?
Just replicate that. Yeah, and it isn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And if there are companies that say, oh no, we've got it figured out, and we've totally dissected this, and we've pulled out all the relevant variables, and we have an algorithm that's going to select that and all that.
I just flew a bullshit flag to the top of the mast.
Yeah. Listen, we've been looking for that for a long time. I would love for it to exist. Thus far, it hasn't existed, and there's just so much variability. And because at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human that is talking to another human, and you're trying to come into the middle of that process and say, hey, we know you like this product. Would you recommend it? And would you recommend it in a way that that person's going to receive and be amenable to? And that is an incredibly difficult thing to actually figure out and systematize. It works. We know it works. But when, like anything, you drill into the minute details, it looks very, very messy. And this is, to come full circle, this is why a portfolio view is so important. All right, is to zoom out. Does this thing as a whole work? Do we see, does it work in its own right based on, our goals? Do we see our, the stuff that we're doing outside of influencer, is that getting more attractive? Do we see any brand sentiment studies, and did we see any shift in brand favorability? You look at it from a macro portfolio view. That's really the only way to measure it.
Yeah, and that's so important, because I think brands a lot of times get caught up on success of individual creators. And we live and breathe influencer marketing. We're not here to sell you on us, but we work with a lot of brands. We have a lot of data at our disposal. We don't bat 1,000. So any individual creator, I'm not going to put my name on the line and say this individual creator is going to perform for your brand. We're just not.
Yeah.
But from a portfolio view, I feel really good if you're running with enough creators that this portfolio is going to deliver, and it's going to be really, really successful for you. So really what you're trying to do is weed out all the things that are definite no's and get to a group of that are legitimate possibilities to work really well for you. And we know that some of them will, and some of them frankly won't. But at a portfolio view, you can feel really good that it's going to be effective, but you're going to run yourself ragged, And I'm not a parent, but it's like, if you're a parent and every single day you're thinking like, oh, did I give my child everything I could? Oh, did I handle that situation right? Are they going to be better off? Like, you're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so look, if you've hung around this far, we really appreciate it. We know that we like to ideate here. Here's what we're going to do next. And if this isn't for you, it's totally fine. Thanks for coming by. If you are interested in digging more and more into the portfolio view, we're gonna just chat about a random brand and say, what would we recommend in terms of designing a portfolio for this brand? Do you want to pick a brand? Do you have one in mind?
Why don't we do Yeti coolers?
Okay, we're gonna do Yeti coolers. It's a perfect brand for the influencer space. It's visual, it's hip, all that. So we're gonna talk about Yeti coolers. All right, how would we design a portfolio? Because there are a couple key elements. One, Yeti, yes, it is applicable for anybody, but I gotta imagine that there's a very significant branding element with Yeti that they want to be very sensitive to.
Right.
You don't want someone wearing, that's significantly overweight with a big belly sticking out and like a halter top and all that. Like, some dude, and I don't mean to be pejorative here, but it's like, yeah, like you don't want you don't.
You want something aspirational.
You want something aspirational. You don't want something that's like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to be associated with that.
Right.
So Yeti has to take. So one consideration, obviously, is going to be: is there a brand fit alignment? Do we like the image? Do we like the aesthetic of this creator? And this is something that we want to be aligned to. Two, Yeti, obviously, yeah, like they are going to need to do a portfolio view, to be sure, meaning they have to engage some micro influencers that seem like they've got really, really off the chart engagement rates. How do you know what engagement rates are? You're simply, it's a very simple formula where you're looking at the number of followers and then the number of views and figuring out what that ratio is. And there's some weighting involved, but it's relatively straightforward. So they want the micro stuff. And they want the micro stuff where they can just simply give them product and they're going to talk about product. But then you get into the paid. What ought they to be looking for in the paid, and what ought they to be? How should they weight some of the different creators, or maybe even platforms?
Well, first thing, So from a platform perspective, I think it goes back to really what are your objectives. So if to go to an extreme, Instagram stories tend to be a reasonably low CPM, but are not great in general in terms of conversion. There's some exceptions to that. TikTok is even lower CPM, but the conversions are also not good, although they are ticking up a little bit. They're getting a little bit better.
Yeah.
I would love to take credit for that, but I can't. YouTube has really good conversion rates because when you think about it, people have more time on their hands when they're watching YouTube videos. So anyways, first pick a platform, pick an approach in terms of what you want to do. Second thing, if I'm Yeti, I'm looking at who are the right customer segments for me. So one, I might be looking at just straight travelers, people who are traveling all the time. Second, I might be looking at adventure seekers, right? Maybe there's something that's specific to a campaign around Father's Day, right? So then you might want to be looking at fathers and sons and spending their time together. So thinking about this like classic marketing segmentation piece.
So one of the things I want to push back on that for a second, because one of the things that we often preach is, whatever your traditional bucketing and your traditional consumer insights, those are of a lot less value in influencer than they might be in your paid search. That kind of segmentation. So why does Yeti need to do it, and why do we typically discourage clients from spending too much time thinking about that?
Yeah, I think Yeti should do this in the context of running a paid campaign.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because you're going to get these assets from influencers. There's a huge convergence from a macro perspective between paid social, UGC, and influencers that's happening.
Right.
So you're going to get these assets which now hit your core customer personas, and then you can run paid behind them, or you can run influencer paid or whitelisting behind those, and that's really, really valuable. But that said, I agree. If we're running what we call organic influencer, yes, you're paying the influencers, so it's not organic from that perspective, but it's the influencer's audience, so it is organic from that angle. But anyhow, the recommendation there would be to work with influencers in a way that we're, from an organic perspective, where they have a really engaged audience of folks who are going to go to the brand that the creators are recommending and make purchases. And that's not publicly available. There's no way you can do that. We have a tremendous amount of data. You want to really look for patterns of creators where they have long-term deals with brands and they're not just bouncing all around. That's a pretty good indication.
Yep. Okay. Well, we hope this is helpful. We are going to leave it there. I don't know, follow us on our social channels, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.